Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you. We hope you'll find this session useful and informative. Just want to say thank you to the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction. They allowed us to break off a little chunk of their Zoom account and use it to do this webinar. So we thank them. I just want to remind everyone to use the chat to shout out your location from where you're watching us today. And I'm guilty of this. Try to remember to use the Q&A function if you're going to ask questions, which we encourage you to do at all times. That way the answers and the questions live together, they stay together, and we can be sure we're not missing any questions out there as the session progresses. Okay, so we're here to really hear, not me, but our three panelists who are also certified living wage owners in the industry. First up, we're going to have Stephanie Soulis, from Little Mushroom Catering and Dining Lounge in Cambridge. And then we're going to hear from Alex Szaflarska. Together we're Bitter Co-operative Brewing in Kitchener. And then we'll hear from Rachel Pellett. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I forgot the name of your companion, but or your partner. We'll get to that. Emma's Country Kitchen in Midtown Toronto. Then we'll also hear at the very end from the Tourism Industry Alliance of Ontario. They have a subsidy program related to the living wage that they really want you to know about. But first, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Ann Coleman, who's going to brief us on what exactly a living wage is in Ontario. So over to you, Ann.
Thanks, Craig, and thank you to everyone who is joining us today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to get to speak with you about the Ontario Living Wage Network and the work that we do. If you're new to our organization, the main work that we do is to calculate living wages across the province and to run an employer certification program where we recognize employers who commit to pay all of their employees at least the living wage. We're a very small nonprofit. Craig and I are the two staff people. And so every chance we get to speak about the living wage, to share information is really fantastic. Next slide, please, Craig. So when I'm speaking about the living wage or doing a presentation, I always like to make sure that we're all on the same page. Some people might have a different idea of what the living wage is. It's really meant to be the hourly wage that a worker needs to earn to cover not just basic expenses, but to have a little bit extra to participate in community. That being said, it's still a very modest wage. It doesn't include savings for retirement or debt repayment or things like post-secondary education for young people. Next slide, please. I really want people to think about the living wage as a tool. It's a practical tool for employers to know that they're paying their employees a decent wage in the area where they're working or where they're located. And it's also a practical tool for reducing poverty through paid work. Next slide, please. So when we do our living wage calculations, we have a number of basket items that we use to collect data for and to do our living wage calculations. We look at basic necessities, so things like the cost of shelter, food, transportation, clothing and footwear, childcare. But we also have a basket item of other expenses that's meant to cover recreation, so things like after-school activities for children, being able to go on a camping vacation at a local provincial park with your family, or being able to afford birthday presents, that type of thing. So we take all of this information into account. We actually gather this data for 3 different household types, and then all of this information goes into a calculator. We take into account government taxes, government credits, like the Canada Child Benefit, for example. And then we are provided with an hourly living wage rate. Next slide, please, Craig. So you can see here, this slide says 2023 living wage rates. We update the living wage every year, and we typically make those announcements beginning to mid-November. So these current living wage rates will be good until November of 2024. So you'll see here that the lowest living wage rate in our province right now is $18.65, which is still a couple dollars more than the current minimum wage in Ontario. And the highest living wage rate, unsurprisingly, is for the Greater Toronto Area, and that's at $25.05. So that's pretty significant, and it's very location specific. We've actually broken the province up into 10 different economic regions that capture areas where people both live and work. And if you have more, are interested to find out more about this, or can't quite figure out where your location fits on the map, you can visit our website, OntarioLivingWage.ca, and you can find, there's an interactive map there, so you can make sure that you know the correct living wage rate for your area. Next slide, please, Craig. So now that we have a living wage rate, we also have employer certification. Employers in our program commit to pay all of their direct and indirect employees at least the living wage. Typically in the restaurant and food service industry, that's really the only part of the program that really applies to these businesses, direct employees, anyone you're directly paying a wage or salary to. The indirect employee refers to any third party or subcontracted worker that works for a business regularly. Usually this comes in if you have contracted cleaning staff. Again, often that's not something that we find in this sector. However, I will mention that employers who are certified in our program are committing to pay a living wage prior to any tips. So we really want to ensure that workers are earning a steady wage, a certain wage directly from their employers. Employers, the process for becoming certified is very simple. Usually employers have a conversation with me to go over pretty much everything that I've spoken with you about today. And so if you're interested in certification after that, just reach out to me through email, and we can kind of fast track you on the through the process. There's an there's an enrollment form that gets completed. I review it. If I have questions, I would let you know. We would then move forward with the annual fee for certification. They're pretty low for a business of 10 or fewer employees. It's $100 a month. And the next level, 11 to 50 employees, jumps to $200. So pretty reasonable fees. And then we move forward with recognition. Employers in our program are added to our online employer directory. You'd receive a employer badge, which is a logo that can be used on a website. We have window decals and vehicle decals if either of those are of interest. And we like to announce all new certified employers through social media. So thank you for letting me just tell you about our program. And I am really happy to pass this back to Craig and on to our guest speakers today, who are the ones that are actually doing this in our communities. But if there's questions after the guest speakers, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. So next we have Stephanie. She's in Kitchener, not too far away from where Anne is, and she's going to speak a little bit about her experiences being one of our longtime certified living wage employers. How long have you been certified? I should have looked this up before, but roughly.
We've been certified living wage champion since 2017. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's been a while. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our business. I love that there's already a question in the Q&A that I hope I can speak to a little bit, but also I've kind of been asking the same question since I started. So I'm glad that it's there. And if you haven't checked that out yet, I'll go in and answer when I'm my side of things when I'm done this, if I haven't done enough justice. So yeah, my name's Stephanie Soulis. I own Little Mushroom Catering and Dining Lounge. We're located in Cambridge. So we have a 28-seat wine bar, and we do brunch and high tea. In the restaurant side of things, but the big part of our business is the catering side. So currently it's our slow season, so we only have about 30 employees right now. We ramp up every spring and usually hit around 40, 45 employees, depending on how busy we're going to be. All of our employees, whether they are our full-time salaried staff, whether they are part-time, or whether they are our casual staff that we bring on for weddings and summer events, are all paid a living wage. with, on top of that, a tip pool. We have a direct tipping system because of the catering. And so with that, then everyone is included in our tip pool and gets a certain ratio depending on the number of hours they work. So yeah, they're going home with a lot more than that $20.90 an hour. They're going home with closer to anywhere between $25 and $45 an hour in the food service industry. So just an idea there for the person who mentioned it in the Q&A. I do want to, I'm going to share my screen because I have a little bit of a presentation to keep me on track. So just a little bit more about Little Mushroom. We have a bakery as well. We do catering. We do have the dining lounge. We're very involved in our community. We're all about diversity and very much local. So Leni is going to be talking to folks at the end. We've been also Feast On certified since 2016, I think. 2016 or 2017, or it was around the same time. But we're all about buying ingredients from our local farmers. I'm drinking my sapsucker today too, which is good old made in Ontario. Gender equality is very important to us. I love that there are 3 strong women owners on this call today. We try to be industry disruptors, and so are often found on with alongside the Living Wage Network or the Culinary Tourism Alliance, because we're trying to do awesome things here in Ontario. So one thing, when I started the business back in 2010, we've been in business for 13, almost 14 years now, was I wanted to make sure that that it was sustainable. So I once upon a time was a geography teacher, and so this little picture of the people, planet, prosperity is near and dear to my heart, and it's how we make decisions within the business. So we want to make sure that we're sort of living in that center space there where there is a balance between people, planet, and prosperity. So the environment side of things I'm not going to talk about here because that's a whole other discussion, but I do want to talk about the people piece. And one of the things that we have here at Little Mushroom is our gratitude and gravy package. So it's kind of like our total rewards, but I hate that term and it sounds like you're shopping for PC points. So our gravy and gratitude perks include things like being a living wage employer. We're also part of the Better Way Alliance, which I know Together We're Bitter is also part of that. And with the Better Way Alliance, that's promising to be paying a living wage, but it's also offering paid sick days and predictable work schedules. We have feedback loops with all of our staff. We're making sure that they're working the hours that they want to be working, whether it's the number of hours or the time of day, the types of shifts that they get. We work with everybody individually and come up with an individual plan for each of them. I mentioned the controlled tip pooling. Sorry, I had said direct before I meant controlled tip pooling, and also around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are a very we're a very diverse staff. So we go from ages of as young as 15 to as old as 68. We attract the retirees as well because we pay well. We also are part of the Safe Space Alliance. We are Rainbow registered, and we're really trying to make sure that this is a good work environment that people are really happy coming to work in. So I had mentioned before that we have about 30 employees right now. So even our lowest paid, dishwasher is making that $20.90. It's really helped to contribute to the sense of teamwork here. Everybody, no matter what position that they're working in, is making a good wage to take home to be able to do things with their family. And also the higher end staff aren't making a ridiculous amount more. It's made that pay gap a lot smaller, and again contributed to teamwork, because it's just as important that we have clean dishes as it is that we're offering great customer service. It's been very positive for us. It's great for retention. It's fantastic for attraction. We're at a lot of the schools have their job fairs and things like that. We participate in a lot of those, and we're spreading the word about how great it's been. We don't need a lot of staff because we have a fantastic team. We don't have the same turnover that we had before, and it's just, yeah, it's been really helpful for us as a tool, but it's a tool that goes alongside a lot of other things that kind of help create the whole package. So things like those paid sick days, we have health spending accounts for all of our full-time employees as well, so that they can get some of that health care that they need, and really just trying to contribute to a better work environment in the food service industry, which is typically, I could tell horror stories about some of the places I worked prior to opening my own space. So again, it's working well for us. We have to make sure that we're trying to save costs in other places. So we do work a lot on efficiency here, so that we're doing things with, doing things the most efficient that we can, so that we're saving on labor hours and don't need as many staff as we maybe would if we weren't thinking that way. But then the staff who are working here are happy about working here and are more productive, and there's better efficiencies. And they all know that they have a voice as well. So we really adhere to that Fair Kitchens oath, and making sure that everyone has an opportunity, if they've got ideas of how to make this an even better workplace, that they can bring those forward. And I think I'm almost at time, but I'm going to wrap up there because I don't want to take too much away from what Alex and Rachel have to say about being part of the Ontario Living Wage Network. So I hope that gave you a good overview of Little Mushroom and what we do.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm just going to, oh, there you go. You got it. Great. Yeah, thank you for that. We're a little bit under time. So there is a question. I was just going to probably ask everyone of this, but have you noticed a change in turnover since becoming a living wage employer?
Yeah, I'll for sure take that one. Absolutely. The caliber of staff that we are able to attract has been better. So we haven't had to do as much letting people know that they're not the right fit for us. And then on the flip side, we have people staying because they're not looking for that better paying job. And they're not looking for that better work environment because they've got a great one here. So unfortunately, the one unfortunate aspect of the catering side of our business is that we are very seasonal. So when we bring new folks on, it's always for a May to December contract, if they're not full-time. So that's where our turnover comes in. And so we do hire again in April. But most of the time we're getting a lot of the same staff coming back, going, thanks for the break over the winter. I'm back. I'm happy to come back to work.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, so thanks for sharing. Stick around if you're able to for the Q&A afterwards. Next, we're going to go to the next panelist from Together We're Bitter Brewing Co-operative in Kitchener. So that's going to be over to Alex. Alex.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting us at this panel. It's great to, as Stephanie pointed out, join a panel of people who are really taking a stand and taking a leadership role in making small businesses sustainable and good for workers. So I'm happy to be here. I'm going to share my.
Oh, sorry, I don't think I quite introduced you correctly. It's a cooperative, so you're an owner, but you're also a worker. Is that true?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about that actually in the presentation. For us, that ties into why we do what we do and the choices that we make. So to kind of backtrack a little bit, my name is Alex. I'm what we call a worker owner at Together We're Bitter Cooperative Brewing. We're one of two cooperative breweries in English-speaking Canada, the other being London Brewing, so shout out to them. There are many more in Quebec, which has kind of more awareness of and more friendly atmosphere towards co-ops, as well as in the States and Europe and all over the world. But we're one of two here. So us and London Brewing opened up at around the same time. And we knew that when we started, we wanted to make our community a little bit better through cooperation and craft beer. We think those two go hand in hand, and we're really lucky that we get to be part of both the co-op space, which is really supportive, and the craft beer space. So I see Mandy Murphy in the list of attendees today. Shout out to Left Field Brewery, which is also a living wage employer and a great brewery based out of Toronto. So we're lucky to be able to fit into both of those worlds, see how they interact. And we knew from the beginning that we wanted to focus on our people, focus on our workers, because our co-op was started as a reaction to what we saw happening in the labor market in Ontario and indeed across the world. And that specifically is the rise of precarious work, which can come in many different forms, but is often characterized by irregular and unpredictable working hours, low wages, temp work, things like that, and lack of protections for workers. So we think one of the answers to that, and it's not the answer, and it's not a good fit for everyone, but for us, we wanted to try something a little bit different. So in response to this growth of precarious work in Ontario, we decided to start a worker-owned co-op. And right at the core of what we do, we put our people. When we wrote out our mission, vision, values, our objectives for the company, when we would meet every Tuesday evening for like 4 to 5 hours to figure out how we could get this thing off the ground. Right at the start, we wanted to make sure that we were providing employment and decent work for our people. And then, of course, building around that, in order to make that sustainable and make that possible, we have to make good beer, provide a good space, and let people know who we are and what we're all about. So we opened our doors in February 2016. So we're turning 8 actually next week. We're really proud of that and excited to celebrate. But it wasn't until 2020 that we were able to become living wage certified. Indeed, it was March of 2020, so right at the start of the pandemic, which is great timing. But we were able to make that happen through years of prioritizing that. When we opened our doors, we paid ourselves $12 an hour, which is all that we could afford. But we made sure that even as owners, we were being paid right away from hour one. We still have a flat wage model. So everyone at Together We're Bitter gets paid living wage. We have a no tip model. So since we opened 8 years ago, we've never taken tips. We kind of include the cost of everything in our beer. And indeed, if you come to the brewery, you'll see kind of little posters up that show, you know, this is what part of the beer cost goes to labor, goes to taxes, goes to all these other things. And so what you see up on the board in terms of the price of our beer is what you pay. We believe that makes sense for us, partly because of tipping models that don't really fit with what we were trying to do. And also because we do retail out of the space, as well as have folks come in and have a glass of beer. And so it would get a little bit messy trying to figure that out. So we made that decision early on and stuck to that as well. I'm just bringing that up because it was a topic that came up. But the wage piece really is central. We would love to be able to pay our people even more, and we're working towards that. But it has been really tough, especially with the living or the cost of living crisis that we're all experiencing right now. But we've made a decision to kind of center our people and do what we can. With the last big increase, there was a point where we weren't sure if we were going to be able to stick with this, because our priority was making sure that everyone got paid as much as we could afford. And if that wasn't at the level we wanted it to be, then that's something that we would have to adjust to. But thankfully, through finding some efficiencies, through our worker owners really stepping up, we were able to meet that goal. And that's something we're really proud of, to be able to stick to that at a time when there are craft breweries kind of closing around us and dealing with some really tough financial strains. So our people are at the core of what we do. We have a group of worker owners, and actually this graphic is a little bit outdated. We had 7, and as of December 2023, we welcomed 2 new worker owners, Amanda and Dan. So the way that it works at our co-op is you work there for about 2 years. There are a couple of interviews throughout that time. You figure out if you're a good fit and this is a business you want to commit to, and the company figures out the same. And then after those 2 years, or about 2,000 hours, you have the option of buying in and become an owner alongside me. And that really means that people feel a sense of ownership, and indeed not just a sense, but they have ownership over their workplace. They have a say in those decisions around wages, around how we schedule, around the products we offer in a real and tangible way. So it's a model that's worked well for us over these last 8 years. We have 9 of these worker owners that decide the strategic direction of the business and run the place together. And then we have a group of folks that we call our community supporters, who are people who believe in the model, wanted to support a craft brewery in their community. And so we're lucky in that instead of going to a bank and getting debt, we were able to go out into the community and raise money through preference shares as a cooperative. So that also gives us a bit of flexibility and a bit of financial sustainability to be able to reach the goals that we have. When we were making the decision about how we could accommodate and keep our living wage status intact, we really heard from community supporters that it was something that they valued. And that extra pressure also motivated us. So it's really a community that believes in that idea and in prioritizing that. So we were lucky to have their support, but it also really kind of pushed us to make sure that we kept coming back to it. We spent a year kind of getting regular updates at board meetings and figuring out a way to make that math work. Our workers have been a really great source of energy, motivation, and really we draw from our workers to become worker owners and decide the direction of the business. And so it's really key that we have a great team, and we've been lucky to attract really great people. So in answer to Craig's question about whether the living wage has allowed us to retain folks, we've been lucky that even before, I think partly because through the co-op model, they see a path to ownership. We've attracted some really great people, but I think it's part of the package of kind of practicing what we preach and proving to our team that we really are putting them first. And so we were lucky to have great people before. We still have them now, but I think it makes them more confident in what we do and in our business. So I'm happy and I'm proud of that. Co-ops are democratically controlled. So all of those worker owners, one person, one vote to decide those big decisions for the business, including these kinds of wage jumps and wage increases. There are different kinds of co-ops. I'm not going to go into this right now just because that's not the point of this presentation, but I did want to highlight this in case someone had questions after or wanted to follow up with me. I'd be happy to share the presentation or more information. But it's because of the people that we have that we were able to turn a big mess into a functioning and lively and thriving community space. And I think being a business that puts people first includes things like making sure that's reflected in wages as much as possible. So even though our profit margins are actually quite thin, when we were opening up, folks were like, oh, craft beer is booming. It's a great business to get into. And the fact of the matter is, like every other small business, it's a tough market and it's a tough place to be. But we make it work because of the people that we have. As Stephanie mentioned, we're also a member of the Better Way Alliance and the Ontario Living Wage Network. And as long as we can, we're going to keep making sure that we can be a good community actor, we can be a good employer, and we can stick to the living wage when we can. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the Q&A box or through my email. I would be happy to go deeper into this. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you, Alex. I love those before and after construction pictures. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to keep it going. Let's go next to Midtown Toronto. We're going to hear from Rachel, and she's going to tell us about her spot, Emma's Country Kitchen, which I think, if I recall correctly, Rachel, that is the name of your grandmother.
Yes, yep, and also my daughter now. But yeah, the bakery was, there was a bakery called Emma's Country Kitchen, which was my grandmother's in Cheltenham, Ontario when I was growing up. So a lot of the recipes are hers, and it's a really nice story to tell our customers as well. So.
Well, it stuck with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for including us today and giving us the opportunity to really speak about something that is so important to our business and just our values as business owners. My name's Rachel Pellett. My business partner is also able to join me today. Her name is Heather. I run the kitchen in the back of house. Heather runs the front of house. She also does our books. We are BFFs, and we have managed to stay so after 12 years in business. So I think that's a good thing for us as well. We have 55 seats. We also have a 20-seat patio that we operate in the summer. Like I said, we've been open for 12 years on St. Clair West. We're only open 4 days a week right now, and we have 12 staff. But that is not an indicator of our business. We do about 400 to 500 people a day on the weekends. We're a brunch restaurant, so our focus is really on fast turnover. We're definitely not rushing people in and out of business, but that is how we make our money, is by turning our tables over. Pre-pandemic, we had 25 staff and we were open 7 days a week, but a lot has changed for us in the last couple of years. Both Heather and I have kids. So we have really tried to find a way to make the business work for us. So right now we're open Friday to Monday. Obviously, we do the majority of our business on Saturday and Sunday. From day one, the focus of our business has really been obviously about great food and great service. But to ensure that happens consistently, we have always put the focus on our staff being the most important asset that our business has. And that's really been the driving force of how we set our business up from day one. We became a certified living wage employer 3 years ago. But since day one, we have been focused on being an equal opportunity employer, an employer who treats our staff fairly, and really one that makes our staff want to show up to work every day. Because I think we've all probably worked for places where the staff do not want to show up. And we really do not have that problem at Emma's Country Kitchen. Even before we became a certified living wage employer, we offered health benefits. We currently do paid sick days. We do paid training for CPR. We do paid training for our staff to get their food handler certificates. Sorry, this is the first time I've done something like this, so bear with me.
Doing great.
Thank you. We really try to promote being living wage certified in the restaurant. It's printed on all of our menus, on our doors, and we really encourage our staff to discuss it with the customers every day. I think that's a really important thing that they can do to sort of share that with our customers. I think there's a lot of ignorance on the dining side of sort of like how restaurants function, about the equations that make restaurants work. And I think it's like really important that the staff take that opportunity to discuss that with our customers. The truth about being an owner, and something that Heather and I have sort of thought about from day one, is that you really have to be willing to start with a blank slate about how you're going to set up your business in all areas. We have really tried to let go of what industry standards have been up until now, because to be honest, they're arbitrary anyways. The idea of having a 30% food cost is no longer what needs to happen if you want to pay your staff a living wage. Those two do not go together necessarily. So you have to really let go of everything that you've been taught about the hospitality industry to make this work. The idea that the kitchen gets a really small tip-up percentage. These are all things that were based on, models that treated the workers unfairly. And, am I saying that? Would you say that I'm saying that right?
It was arbitrary to begin with,
Yeah.
so it never really mattered much to us changing that model.
Right. So we tried to set up the business to begin with a blank slate, an open perspective, and we continue to let that drive how the business changes going forward. Sorry, do you want to say the part about,
the way that we instituted offering a living wage at our business is we created like a base minimum wage in-house that is based on a calculation of what the living wage is, including an amount for the full benefits that we offer. And anyone who gets hired starts at that amount. And then everyone who works for us gets a $1 raise on top of that for every year of service. Most of our employees we're making a living wage before we were certified, just because we've always offered annual raises to reward people for sticking with us. But being certified was important to us, just to kind of, we think it helps spread the word about those changes that are necessary. Anytime there's an increase, everybody's wage, like the base wage increases and everybody's wage increases accordingly.
Right.
Every year we reassess how that works for our business and everyone in it. So this year we're instituting a cap on wages because we have a lot of people that have been with us for almost 10 years.
So do the math in Toronto.
It gets to be a lot. But as far as like tips are concerned, we do an even split between all employees based on the hours that they work.
The idea for us, though, also, is we value all of our employees equally. Yes, we have a couple managers. How we set them apart is they are given paid vacation, and they also get money allotment for a cell phone plan. But because Heather and I are actively working in the business every day as well, and everyone works so hard, we don't really need to have a huge pay gap for the managers. And I think Stephanie said this, but the dishwashers are like just as important as the managers. Everyone is really treated as an equal, and everyone sees each other as an equal in our business. And especially with the way that we pool the tips, that means that we are able to do those 400 people a day that we need to in order to pay our staff the living wage. That's the equation for our business, is the turnover in order to bring in the revenue to.
So most of our employees have been with us for more than 5 years. We don't have to hire a lot. There's definitely very little turnover. We more do hiring when our business grows and we add days or a patio or whatever. And something I can speak about is working in the front of house. Every time that I'm at the business, people make a point to tell me at least once a day, but usually multiple people a day make a point to tell me how wonderful it is to see the same people every time they come to the restaurant, to see the same people working there, to see that everybody is happy. It really makes a difference, I think. People enjoy supporting our business because they feel like they're supporting their community, which they are. And we feel like we're supporting our community by being, fair employers in that way. But it's really gratifying. And, sometimes I don't think whether people will recognize the things that you're doing in your business that are integrity based, but I can tell you that they do. They 100% do, and we're told all the time. And it's really moving, and it makes it all the more worth it to make those changes, to do those things. Not that it wasn't important to begin with, but it's always nice to be recognized. And I can tell you that those things show.
Yeah.
And we've all been to places where it's a different person every time you go and you just don't want to go anymore, right?
Right.
So
And just, you know, overall, definitely our prices are higher than, especially in Toronto, than what you would see, you know, at other breakfast restaurants, because that is all we do. But, you know, our experience is that, you know, the customers are okay to pay more. You know, they understand why. So yeah, like both Heather and I have families now, and it is really important for us to be leaders for our kids, but more so for this industry. And, you know, we're out there to really say that like having a successful business and being a fair employee do not have to be mutually exclusive. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both for that share. And that's a good segue into our Q&A, because one of the first questions that came in, we have answered it, but I'm sure, you know, there's other attendees that are thinking it, is we have a mix of employers here that use both gratuity and they don't use gratuity in part of their compensation, but they're all certified living wage employers. And so I found that was interesting. But like I said, Anne did answer that in the chat, and that we made the decision to not include, you know, transient income in the level of the living wage that people receive. But that is an ongoing discussion, and we're always happy to hear from people in the industry to talk about that, because of course, myself and Anne are not in a part of that industry. So it's good to get that expertise. Well, let me see. Is there any more questions? Anybody else? You know, just file them in there. But I think there's been a lot of information that we've gotten, really comprehensive stories that you've shared. So I think it's so comprehensive that everybody has everything they need, which is awesome. So one thing, oh, Anne, yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention Mandy from Left Field just reached out and asked a question about health benefits. That's an offset that I can work out for a business if they're interested in that. So if there's anyone else wondering about those sorts of things, I can specifically reach out to me and I can give you some more information about that.
Right. And what kind of benefits are eligible to reduce one's living wage rate?
So I can only remove something from the living wage calculation that's in there for in the first place. When we do our living wage calculation, we assume an employer is not providing health benefits. And because of that, we include health insurance. So I can take up to 100% of the cost of the health insurance package out of the calculation, and that significantly reduces the living wage rate. So I just need to know a little bit more about what's provided for health benefits, and then I can work out that offset. That's typically the only thing that will really, that I can really use as an offset. There's some businesses out there that will provide, you know, transportation, you know, benefits, or cell phone benefits. That's another thing that could reduce the living wage rate. They're not often offered. So those are typically, though, the only things that would offset. But if you have questions about other things, let me know and I can answer that.
And it brings it down by what, $1 at the most? Like, how much does it reduce it?
It depends a little bit on the area. I would say right now, for all of the benefit offsets, if I can remove 100% of the health insurance, it reduces the living wage rate by over $1. It just depends on the percentage of the overall annual expenses that's made up of the health insurance. So it just varies from community to community, or economic region to economic region, as well as from year to year. It'll change. So I just work out those adjustments for folks every year, let them keep them up to date.
Okay, cool. We have a question from Corey. Corey, I made you a panelist, so if you wanted to chime in, hit us up. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I only meant to put it in the chat, but thanks for putting me on. Is my audio working?
It is.
Excellent. Yeah, so this is something I study a lot, and I always come back to an essential question for everybody, which is that progressive initiatives can't achieve their goals if the business isn't profitable, because the business isn't sustainable. You've all kind of talked to that and alluded to the slim margin. Can everyone tell us if you're at least above the national dismal restaurant average for 3 to 5% profit margin or where you are at or where last year was at?
We can chime in. You know, Heather and I were actually talking about this before we hopped on the Zoom, and with two owners specifically, it's a little bit different. You know, the way that you see your profit is not necessarily the same for us because we take a salary, you know,
Mhm.
sorry, like you want to paraphrase what I'm trying to say here because that's what we were talking about before.
I could say that we're like just hovering above that dismal number this year. Though it's been a tough recovery from the pandemic. I'm sure everybody feels the same way. But I think we all like I think we personally judge like I think that there's like a lot of different things that go into what makes you profitable
Right.
and who you're accountable to. So I think it's probably like a lot different for Alex, probably, you know, where everybody is an owner. Stephanie, I don't know how many partners you have. Just you. Yeah. So, you know, for us, there's two of us. We make sure to pay ourselves
What we need.
think is fair and what we need. And so profit on top, you know, we've got great cash flow. We're profitable and that's enough for us. We're not looking for massive margins because
we don't need it. And we constantly reinvest in the business every day as well. And, you know, in terms of our equipment maintenance and stuff like that, you know, certainly equipment breaks, you have to do that. But, you know, we're pretty, we've been open for 12 years. So, you know, what we invest in the business happens consistently. You know, our salary that we take is consistent. So we don't really need to make a lot.
I think what Rachel's trying to say is like that number can be arbitrary and misleading because I think it means a different thing to different businesses based on how they're structured and how they pay their owners, how they you know, everything.
So yes, technically we take a profit. It is slim.
If that's how you want to look at it, but is that a valuable insight for every business? Because I don't think it means the same thing for every business. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here too. I think it's really important what Rachel and Heather said there too about reinvesting in your business. Any profits that we have, we're still growing. We're still, you know, after 14 years, we're still growing. We haven't reached that plateau yet. So we are reinvesting in more vans. Like our overhead is ridiculous on the catering side because we have all of our own equipment. You know, everything from our chafing dishes and things that we run out of, like our fuel and stuff like that. But also, yeah, we have 6 delivery vans that we're constantly having to fix up, and we could have more profit, except I want to make sure that we have the tools in place to grow and to keep growing. Once we hit that plateau, you know, that's when, you know, every time we kind of come to a crossroads, we have to decide, are we going to you know, just ride this and be happy with this, or do we want to continue to grow? And I keep, part of the problem with me being the one and only owner is that I say, let's keep going, guys, let's keep going. So we haven't reached that slowdown period yet. At one point we were also kitchen mercenaries and running 7 other restaurant kitchens for them. That was in 2022. And that was actually probably the least amount of profit we've ever made because we weren't being efficient because we were managing 7 different locations with having to have actually have managers at 7 different locations and just the amount of logistics that was involved in that. So I can happily say that this year we are going to be much more profitable than we were in 2022 when we were doing that. But yeah, it's all about reinvesting in the business right now. So yeah, slim profit margins, but we know that we're going to have some profit margins because of the way that we're doing things. It's not just about doing better for our own staff and for our communities. You know, a lot of the money that could potentially be profits, we're also putting back into our community through sponsorships, and through volunteer, like we do group volunteering. Tomorrow, actually, we're all going to the Cambridge Self-Help Food Bank. So we close for a day, and my staff all go and volunteer, and I pay them to go for the day to volunteer. So, you know, things like that. If I didn't do that, our profit margins would be higher, but we wouldn't be who we are as a company then.
I appreciate, and I think this answer really highlights how different each of our businesses are. Our margins are slightly higher than that 3 to 4, but we really make our model's different, right? We don't have a kitchen, so it's a very different kind of business. Also, we made sure that the focus is on wages and paying good wage. So we've put an emphasis on getting to that living wage and staying there. And then after that, we kind of keep pushing on top of that. And we also try to focus on being a good place to work and being a good actor in the community. And that takes some kind of some of the emphasis off of that as well. As a co-op, one of the key tenets is economic engagement. So the idea is while you're with the business, you're making money from it, you're pulling those wages. And when it's time for you to move on and someone else steps in to take your place, then they're the ones that get the benefits. So there's less of that pressure.
And
all right, well, thanks for the question.
Oh, sorry, Craig. I was just going to say someone had asked about profit sharing. My guess is probably with the co-op you do that. For us, what that ends up being is how much extra do we have left over that we don't need in retained earnings that we can, how big of party are we going to throw for our staff? So that's how we profit share with our staff. It's how many outings, how many beach days, how many parties are we gonna have. That's our profit sharing.
With the worker-owned co-op, one of the models is you get what's called patronage dividends at the end. After you've reinvested in the business, paid off your debts, done all that good stuff, what's left over you can divide among the worker owners based on the hours that they worked that year. So the idea is what you put into the business is what you get out. But to be honest, we're always reinvesting. So we have never paid patronage dividends. We get our wages and keep operating. And thankfully it's been 8 years, so knock wood. To 8 more.
Thank you for that great question, Corey and Russ. We have one new one. This should be quick. I can answer this question. There's 19,000 licensed establishments. I didn't know that. Licensed establishments in Ontario, approximately how many? I can tell you exactly how many restaurants and places in the industry are in. It's 37. That's the question. We're trying to grow that number, the purpose of this webinar. The second question is, why would we exclude guaranteed top-ups that come via gratuity? Well, if you're guaranteeing a set amount is going to be added to the paycheck and no less than that, and that combines to make a living wage, then you're a living wage employer. So yeah, you're right. It is semantics, but this is part of the thing that I was talking about earlier as we work through how to speak about gratuity in the industry. Okay, so I think that's what we have for questions. What I want to do now is I want to turn it over to Leni because she's from the Tourism Alliance of Ontario, and they have a living wage related program that I think we should all hear about real briefly. Leni.
Thank you so much, Craig and Anne, for having me and being able to be part of this conversation with these incredible business owners who think out of the box and put integrity and values first. It's really inspiring, and I'm so glad and thankful to be here. So as Craig said, my name is Leni Brem. I work with the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, and we've been running a program called the Tourism Workforce Sustainability Program since April 1st of 2023. So the aim of the program is to help tourism and hospitality employers to expand, diversify, and retain their workforce. We know there's been workforce challenges. I probably don't have to talk to this audience about that. The key components to the program are a comprehensive resource guide and a wage top-up to support employers who are paying the Ontario living wage for their region for the first time. The program also gives access to free training provided by our partners at the Ontario Tourism Education Corporation. And so we know that tourism and hospitality employers are competing in a really tight labor market. As Stephanie said, you can stand out and attract top talent with those higher wages and retain them as well. I think everyone's spoken about that today. In addition to the wage top-up, our employer resource guide offers a lot of information about how to attract and retain diverse staff. So not only how your job posts can reach diverse audiences, but how to ensure that job ad is inclusive to make your hiring process accessible and that your workplace is welcoming and supportive. So through Ontario's Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, we got funding for the first year of our program, which is coming to an end on March 31st, the first year of the program, that is. We've applied for additional funding to continue the program into the next fiscal year because we know that our peak tourism and hiring season is just around the corner, and employers are going to need this support in a few months. So the program is really perfect for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and certainly employers who are interested in trying to pay better wages and making progress towards living wage certification. So it can help you with the transition and creating a bridge to start moving in that direction. There's a lot of different ins and outs of the program. It's pretty comprehensive. So I'd invite you all to check out the website, which I think Craig has put the link in the chat. It has all of the details. It also has the registration form, and all the registrations help us to advocate for continued funding so that this wage support is there when you need it, when most of our industry is hiring, which is not necessarily right now. So you'll find contact information also on that page in case you have any questions that aren't covered by the FAQs or on the page itself. And there's also a recording of a webinar if you want to hear us talking about the program. And the last thing I'd like to add is that we have a really broad definition of who is a tourism and hospitality employer. So many different business types touch the visitor economy, including cafes and restaurants. And so the program is really probably open to all tourism, hospitality, food service employers. So I'd be so happy to hear from anybody with questions or interest in the program. And yeah, thank you so much for your time and for having me here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Leni. Interesting program. And do you, just really quickly, do you have a sense of the renewal in the coming cycle?
I don't know. We're hoping to hear in the next couple of weeks. We designed the program as a 3-year program. And so we were awarded 1 year's worth of funding. So we are very optimistic about continued funding for the program.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program. And that's just how it goes with these kinds of funding cycles. You have to wait and find out. So
wait and
excellent.
See.
Yep. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. And I think with that, that is the end. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. Look at that. That's how we do things here at the Ontario Living Wage Network. So on behalf of myself and Anne with the network and our panelists, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Thank you for the panelists for making time out of your workday for this. And for everybody that's joining us, I hope it was useful. I think it was. If you have any inclination to find out more about certification, the address is ontariolivingwage.ca/certify, which I'm also going to send you to when you end this webinar as well. So once again, thank you and good day.
Thanks, everyone.